This is Tipping Point Radio. I'm Craig Merriweather, and you're listening to Garden of the Mystics. Lately, for some reason, a lot of synchronicities have been appearing in my life about intuition and the energy systems of the body, more widely known as the chakras. And a lot of this information has been coming to me due to the issues, both physically and emotionally, that have been appearing in my life. So, with all these interesting synchronicities happening, I guess I should say I was not surprised that Deidre's name showed up in an email from someone else I was trying to arrange an interview with, and I easily scheduled this time to talk together. Deidre is known as the Intuitive Life Makeover Coach and is a sought-after and highly respected intuitive vibrational catalyst and coach, a best-selling author, empowering speaker, and intuitive artist who works with divine energy and frequency. She is the author of Extreme Intuitive Makeover, 55 Keys to Health, Wealth, and Happiness, and Miraculous, How Spiritual Awakening Cured My Depression, Inspired My Purpose, and Ignited the Intuitive Powers Within. Her online course, Spend More Time Doing What You Love, is a popular daily OM favorite and hit the top 10 in its first week. Anne has been invited to contribute her divine wisdom with numerous high-profile sites including Dr. Laura, BeliefNet, eHarmony, and Aspire Magazine, to name a few. So let's get right to it, and here's my interview with Deidre. Hi, Anne. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Craig. It's such an honor to be here.
Well, I wanted to start off with kind of giving everybody a Intuitive 101 class, I guess you'd say. In prepping for this interview, I was listening to a lot of other things about intuition and intuitiveness, and there seems to be this common language that gets used, and if you're not, already a student or know a lot about it, then you might get a little lost. So I thought maybe I could just ask you, Anne, to break it down for us. What does it mean to be an intuitive? What does intuition mean? What do the energy centers mean? And just kind of take us through a introduction to what it is you do.
Sure, I'd love to. I didn't recognize my intuition for most of my life. So what happened about 10 years ago was rather drastic in terms of just about everything in my life had come to a screeching halt because I had suffered so severely from depression that I literally became catatonic and could not function. So I found a meditation about 10 months later called Kriya Yoga, and I began to practice it. And within a few weeks, not only had the depression lifted, but this energy really began to become reborn within me. I had been creative at certain points throughout my life, but this really felt different. This felt like a guided creativity, an intuitive creativity. And I was very much aware of it and conscious of it in a way that I never had been. So I began to write my first book, and I began to paint in a different way. I'd been a painter, but I hadn't really connected to it, like I said. So now I began to recognize literally a voice within me that I could hear rather clearly thanks to this meditation, and it said, you will write a book. There's a book. And I could see in my mind's eye, which I know now is clairvoyance, one of my paintings with words around it. And I literally went into my living room and began to write that book, and it was one of the easiest things I had ever done up until that point. And so what I recognize is that we do have this intuitive gift ability. We're all born with it, and we may recognize some gut hunches. So there's different channels of it, and I can talk about that. What I've done is really pay attention to it and practice it and notice it and work with it, and it is constant, and it never fails. So I can go into more about the energy systems that we have too, the chakras that are part of our intuitiveness, I believe. Would that be helpful, Craig?
Yeah, actually, let's do that, because it's interesting that this interview happens as it's happening right now, because just recently, within the last month or so, and this is maybe the synchronicity, the connection we all have together, I've been learning about and studying, and all this stuff about the chakras has come up for me, and so this would be amazingly great for me, and hopefully other people as well. So yeah, let's go through the chakras and understand that a little more.
Yes, and this information came to me intuitively as well. Like I said, I did receive a degree in art history, a BA, But the intuitiveness that I'm able to tap into gives me great wisdom that I didn't know that I had. So I've been taught by the divine that we have 7 main spiritual energy centers, beginning from the root, the base of our spine, going up to the top of our head for the 7 main energy or spiritual centers in our body, going from root to crown. And each of these centers are connections to God, higher power source, the creator. Because I don't really feel it matters what we call that great power, but we all are connected to it. And our chakras are a way that we can work with our own energy from the inside out. You know, there's a lot of different belief systems and religions that talk about this. The great sages talk about the kingdom of heaven is within. And this is what I feel is a great part of this, is our own energy center. So the root has to do with at the base of our spine, has to do with stability, feeling that we are on purpose. And this is how it's come to me. You may read different books and receive different information. It more or less is all the same as I can tell, but this really has been given to me intuitively. So if you see something different, you know, there may be different, but virtually it's all about the same teachings, I find. So the root has to do with stability, and different vibrations in that have to do with the lower feeling of stability, the denser when we don't feel stable. So we work with our chakras, our energy system, so that we can feel the most stability. You understand? So there's no real polarity or duality within our energy, but there's different density or energies. So moving up, we have the second chakra, which has to do with creativity, honoring our feelings, bliss. The inner child is in there, the sense of play. And I've renamed these the wealth centers, actually, because we find great wealth within them. So the second chakra is the creativity and truth wealth center, because the truth of who we are is highly creative. And just to go back to the root, that's the foundation wealth center. So it's like building a house from the foundation up. And so this chakra, if we feel blocked creatively, we could do some work in this chakra, and we can move the energy. And this is what I help people do with a psychic intuitive gift to help work with the chakras. And energy literally comes through me and helps dissolve these denser blocks. So if you're not feeling blissful, if you're not feeling joy, and a lot of that depression I had suffered from was from a lot of dense energy in these centers. We go through life and we pick up things that people say, and what a teacher said, what a well-meaning parent said, and it literally can get stuck in our energy field. And we may not be thinking about it for years at a time, but it doesn't mean that it's not there. So like I said, with the psychic intuitive gift, I've discovered working with people that once we put awareness on what some of these denser, difficult emotions are, we can literally dissolve the energy and help it to flow again. Okay, so that's how that well-being piece can come in from the inside out. And the third chakra is the power well center. That has to do with inner power, feeling aligned with the divine will, feeling not controlled or manipulated, and free from the opinions of other people. And then we have the heart chakra, the love well center. Now the heart carries our griefs, our sorrows. We don't go through life without losing something or someone, or a pet, friendships, disappointing experiences in life. So those can get anchored in our heart, but we can work with this center and dissolve that denser energy and then move into the high heart of compassion, divine perspective. And it's also the gateway and the portal to divine wisdom. So when you hear follow your heart, the heart is really a wonderful communicator for us to listen to. And then we have the throat chakra, the communication well center. And this is not about stifling or having to yell and scream to be heard, but communicating from the heart. We can have balanced communication. It's also the divine expression of who we are. We all have an energy signature with gifts and talents to express in the world. So we can do that with our voice, with our writing, with our being through the center. And then the sixth chakra is the third eye or brow. I call it intuition wealth center. And I find psychic abilities with people in this center: clear seeing, clear hearing, clear knowing, clear feeling. We have a divine birthright to be connected to this intuition and to be able to hear it and follow it very clearly. And then we have the source wealth center at the top of our head, the crown chakra, and that's our 24/7 connection to our higher self, to God, to spirit. Literally, that light can come right down through that crown chakra and fill us with information, light, and wisdom and connection.
Well, at any one time, any one of these 7 or 2 or 3 or 4 of these centers could be blocked in some way.
That's right. And with that denser energy.
How do we get rid of the denser energy?
Well, there are chakra clearing exercises you can do. You can become aware of what these centers are, and you can begin to focus your energy and intention there and ask your higher self. I work with God, Divine Spirit. I work with a team of archangels. We all can do this, call in this energy. And when I do this for myself, information comes to me intuitively, what something, and literally just dissolves and starts moving the energy. So awareness. We can do our own chakra clearing. And I do work professionally with people and have for many years as a life coach working through the chakras as well. So it's definitely something that we can do and pay attention to, and people can feel instantly free in certain areas with this kind of work. It's miraculous, really.
So if there's an issue in your life that's not going well, maybe it's a long-term issue, this could literally be a block in one of these energy centers.
Yes, if you've lost someone and your heart is literally aching and you can feel it, or you don't think about it very often, or you eat some ice cream to try to forget about it. You know, these kind of coping things that we do in order to not feel our feelings don't really work. It ends up getting stuff down in our energy centers, and over time we don't feel well. And it can end up in terms of a physical symptom that's related to something physically that started out as something emotionally.
So we have this ability, you said we all have this ability to deal with our energy centers, to be intuitive.
Yes.
I don't feel very intuitive. How does one tap into that?
Most people are aware of a kind of feeling that they get. So let's talk about what the intuition is in terms of the 4 ways that you can sense it. Okay, so the first one that a lot of people know about more than others potentially is the clear feeling, clairsentience it's called, clear feeling. So if you've got a decision to make in your life, you may get butterflies in the stomach. You're going to feel those feelings somewhere. You're going to more than likely you're going to feel them in your stomach. You know, that gut feeling. You experience that, Craig. You just get a gut feeling about something. Okay? So the key to paying attention to that is to observe it. Okay? Notice your feelings. That's different than engaging with them. So begin to witness and notice how you feel. When you do that, you're automatically lifted into a higher dimension or space where you can receive more information about it. Okay? So the key is not to judge it. So instead of like, oh, I've got a stomachache, I feel terrible, or I'm so nervous, that can shut down your intuition. You see? So instead, you observe, oh, look how nervous I feel. Is that nervousness? You go into inquiry, it's like you're interested in a good friend telling you something, you see? So what are you telling me, feelings in the stomach? And then you can potentially hear. So the next piece of information could be clear hearing. At any given time, no jokes aside about voices in the head, but we do have voices that are from the ego, from the mind, that are practical. You know, you should do this, X, Y, Z. I think most of us are familiar with that, how we kind of do this self-talk. The higher self feels and hears and sounds different. The higher self sounds powerful, loving, wise, and has a spontaneous feel. Okay? Have you ever heard that, Craig?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what
definitely.
I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah?
Yeah.
So from hearing this today, this information, you move forward and you pay attention to that more, recognizing it, appreciating it. So then we get into vibration and energy. Appreciation, love, and gratitude are very high energies. So when you appreciate hearing that, you receive more. So it's the law of increase. Okay, so appreciating and noticing that valuable information and that wisdom will bring more of it to your attention. Okay, so that's the hearing piece. Then there's the knowing. I bet there's times in your life where you just knew something, you can't explain why you knew it, but you just did. That you didn't research it in a book, it just came to you. That ability is possible for all of us, and it happens more than we may realize. But focusing on that and working with that and understanding that that is an ability that we have is the clear knowing. And then the clairvoyance, that piece. Now, when I began to do this meditation, and it was taught to me to semi-close my eyes and look between my brows and, try not to go cross-eyed with it. It's a little bit of technique with this Kriya Yoga, but after some time, I have developed this inner movie screen in my mind's eye. So when I close my eyes, I can see, it's almost like the movie in a picture. So I've developed this. At the same time, the clairvoyance is also your imagination. So if you could imagine a sunset, then that's a piece of clear seeing and a clairvoyant ability. Okay? Yeah. So now that I mentioned all those, does that feel like you may be more connected than you had thought?
Yeah, definitely. We always kind of beat ourselves up for not following our intuition sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe it's hard to pat ourselves on the back when we do follow our intuition and it goes right. We just think, oh, okay, it just went right. We seem to beat ourselves up when things don't go right. It never seems to click to us that we have this ability. We seem to, or have been taught to fear our own power and our own mm-hmm. ability to do this kind of stuff.
That's right. There have not been a lot of classes in this, and we didn't learn to trust our feelings and notions if there wasn't evidence. We've been taught to, faith is evidence of things unseen. Believing things that we haven't quite seen come to pass yet seems risky at best, but I've learned over the past decade that this wisdom and intuition that I follow is spot on every time. So I've learned to rely on it in a way that navigates my life. Another good point you're bringing up here is there isn't necessarily a map with this. When you're following an intuitive insight that you receive, you may have this knowing, but you don't know at the same time how things are going to turn out. There's a certain kind of safety in research and understanding things from an educational point of view. And education is wonderful. At the same time, this intuitive ability may feel like you're navigating a path with hardly any light to it. I've seen an image that, like driving a car with the fog, you can only see about a foot ahead. Sometimes it feels like that when you're navigating your life with your intuition. But the feeling and the knowing and the power of the choices that you make from that begin those synchronicities that you mentioned. The universe, the doors start to open. Joseph Campbell, I believe, had a quote about a hallway that you look down and there's no doors, but when you follow that intuitive step, doors start to open as you proceed.
Well, speaking of synchronicities, literally like 24 hours ago, I was sitting in a workshop, and one of the people lecturing at the workshop was Dr. Roland McCready of the Heart Math Institute. And they've been doing, the last 20 years, 25 years, been doing tons of studies on coherence between the heart and the brain and the rest of the body and to the field around you. And it sounds woo-woo and weird and science fiction, but he starts bringing up all these studies and saying things and finding out that the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Like 90% more information shoots from the heart to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. The heart is actually an electrical source in the body, the largest electrical source. It's creating electrical currents, which when you have an electrical current, you get, as we've learned in high school science class, you have a magnetic field. And so now there's this field. And when he explains it scientifically, it's very wild. And he was showing studies of how they had people in front of a computer, and the computer would randomly show pictures that were either happy pictures or maybe kind of scary pictures, like of a snake or a tarantula or something. And they had these people hooked up to the brain monitors, to heart monitors, all sorts of things. And they showed that the heart could tell before the picture was flashed on the screen. The heart would kind of if it was a happy picture, the heart kind of energy would go up. If the picture that was about to be shown was kind of a scary one, the heart energy would kind of take a dive. And then they showed when the brain connected with the fact that they were seeing a picture, and the heart always moved first before the picture was there. It was fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Yes, yeah. That's it. That is it. Yeah, perfect synchronicity with what we're talking about today. Yeah. Yes, and so, I love the scientific piece coming in now.
Yeah, and I'm sure I haven't explored too much on HeartMath. I'm sure their website has lots of this information, but this basically you take this and run with it. You've learned to, I don't know if control is the right word, but learn to work with this energy. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. And another piece of that with the heart is with an open heart. Okay, so working as an intuitive healer over the years, it's a great honor to work with people and to have worked with my own heart in working through forgiveness and all. The Course in Miracles says there is no forgiveness, but to the extent where everything is forgiven from that perspective. At the same time, there's a holistic piece that we are already whole, we are already healed, we are already divinely perfect. We do go through life and pick up different energies, like I mentioned, and we also experience these losses that feel very real. So to be able to work with our own heart through compassion and understanding for ourselves, very, very important, and then being able to work with other people through the heart, because the heart is incredibly intuitive, and that's wonderful. That has been my experience, where it can sense and pick up things in advance. It's intuitively speaking to us, and to be able to follow that is helpful to have worked through our difficult emotions without any judgment. Does that make sense? So that we can lighten the heart.
Yeah, and it makes sense, and this kind of leads into maybe a bit of a tangent, or maybe a new topic. Now that we've kind of introduced this, I heard you say once, and hearing a bit of your story, and if people have listened to the series, maybe they know a bit of my story, but I heard you say once that people find themselves in relationship crisis, health crisis, maybe money issues, and this may be all pointing to a spiritual issue. And it kind of ties in with something I heard somebody else say at one point, that you become spiritually bankrupt before you become financially bankrupt. And it all ties into these kind of energy center and blockages.
That's exactly what happened to me 10 years ago, and I wrote my book, Miraculous, about spiritual awakening and unleashing these powers. But prior to that point, I felt like I had made decisions in my life based on my ego, because I didn't really know differently. It seemed like a good idea at the time to follow whatever advice I was giving myself, and I really became what I called in my first book, poverty of the soul. And so, along with not really expressing or experiencing my experiences, I used to smoke a pack of cigarettes a day before all this, gratefully quit. But going through life without really feeling my feelings, or knowing that I could do something like that and care about myself in a way that would allow compassion for myself, and feeling like that inner child. So many things tie into the chakras, the inner child in there, the things that we go through. To be able to make peace with all of that can lighten our whole vibrational field. And then that magnetic piece of the heart can absolutely attract the like-minded energy. That's that law of attraction. So personally, I went through an overhaul with my own energetic system. I did go through white light in space, which sounds kind of kooky, but that's what the Kriya Yoga meditation, I actually did go, and my soul went into space, and a vortexing white light came through me, which I recognize as the Christ consciousness coming in, which allowed another piece of intuitive unleashment, floodgates to open for me. And basically, we've heard about the Kundalini and the yoga and the breathing, moving all of that energy up through our chakra systems can help dissolve all that dense energy. There's no judgment about what we've gone through in life, but being able to deal with it and work with it has been life-changing for me and for many people that I work with, so I know how powerful it is.
Well, it's interesting you say no judgment, because one of the other things you talk about is what you struggle with is here to teach you.
Yes, and what you can teach others with, which is really good news when you've gone through such things.
Yeah. Well, exactly what you're doing. I mean, you went through your crisis, and you found your way out of the darkness, and now you're here, teaching and working with others to help them move through their crisis as well, crisis of the soul, and help them open up to their gifts or their right to use this energy and use this power.
It is. And I remember the moment when I realized that all of my pain had meaning, and it was a beautiful moment to recognize that it hadn't all been in vain. And it just felt important for some reason, that I know a lot of us feel like we struggle and things don't seem to get better. But inevitably, we're always evolving, and I do feel like God, the universe, is always unfolding our lives in support of us, even if it doesn't look like that, and all of the work and intentions that we have and prayers do get heard and answered. And I know this. So although times can seem dark and bleak on the television in a given moment, doing our own inner work and having shows like yours, Craig, are life changers. They're game changers for all of us.
Well, thank you. I want to hit on that pain has meaning that you just said in your book, Extreme Intuitive Makeover: 55 Keys to Health, Wealth, and Happiness. Each chapter is a different key you talk about, and there's a couple in there that I wanted to ask you about, and one of them is forgiveness, and this is one of the difficult ones for people who have had this pain that is caused by other people, and we can get into whether it's caused by other people or not, but somebody does something to us, or we perceive them doing something to us, it hurts us deeply, and our spouse leaves us, or what have you.
Right.
Forgiveness is one of your keys, and I wonder if you could talk about that.
One of the biggest epiphanies I had when I began to write was that it was important to forgive myself first. So that's a big piece. Forgiving other people does come, one of the biggest pieces we can give to ourselves is to be incredibly gentle and kind and compassionate and forgiving with ourselves. Because I feel like when things happen, like you said, say a spouse leaves us, we might go into blame. We begin to notice our emotions about the situation. To be very kind and forgiving with ourselves is very, very helpful and important, I find. I did channel my first book. I didn't recognize it at the time, but this information that literally came through me and through Extreme Intuitive Makeover, which was, I felt like I'd been coaching people and wanted to put this all in a book because I found the coaching so powerful. But the piece that came through intuitively about forgiveness was that I do work with Jesus as one of my guides, and I'd heard forgive enemies, right? The one about love your enemies, and I recognized as I was writing that the enemies sometimes lie within us. Sometimes we're incredibly hurtful to ourselves in our self-talk. And so to begin to love and appreciate ourselves no matter what is probably the most compelling piece of forgiveness that we can go through. Because once we can do that, we truly can forgive other people. And by that, there's some recognition about not taking things personally, recognizing that people are working with different consciousness at any given moment. And ultimately, what I've asked for in my life is to be shown a divine perspective. So if I get into a situation where I feel hurt in some way, I ask literally God to show me what the perspective is so that I can apply compassion to that person and some divine understanding instead of being enmeshed with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, I don't think it's any accident that these two keys are next to each other. There's forgiveness, but then there's also worthiness, and what you were just saying, to be kind to yourself, to forgive yourself. That goes along with, big time, with feeling worthy of all this.
Yeah, worthiness is another one that doesn't come naturally in some cases to many of us, I've noticed. You can go through decades of your life and not recognize, again, the self-talk. When you become more aware, which is what your intuition will help you do. Your intuition, talk about the heart and the divine mind and cosmic consciousness, and God is extremely generous. we can know anything, really, and with all the nobility of the gift of intuition, to use it in service and to help yourself and potentially other people, we really are given the keys to the kingdom in terms of information and wisdom for our lives. So feeling worthy for that is something that is worth considering, let's put it that way. Just becoming aware of when you don't feel worthy and how you're talking, or if somebody gives you a compliment and notice yourself, that old thing, there's different signs here if you're not giving yourself worthiness. So it's important. It's self-love. There's just so much to it. We're born worthy, and we have a divine birthright to experience joy. Yeah. So yes, it's really important.
Well, the other one that really caught my attention I wanted to ask you about is another key, and it's "This is easier than I thought." I love that one. I mean, just we try to, or at least in my life, let's just go with me. I got to make things difficult. Otherwise, I don't know, maybe it doesn't count, or I have no idea. But a lot of
you're becoming more aware already.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And I'm at a point in my life where, and maybe that's something that you do in your 20s and 30s and things. Oh, it's got to be difficult. You got to climb to the top of you just can't climb a mountain. You have to climb Mount Everest. And I'm at a point where it's like, man, it would just be nice if it was easy. And I want things to be easier. And so I love that you could just think that it's easy.
Yeah, and the self-talk too is such a key piece, because that the voices that are running us may not even be our own. They could be to stop and potentially question in any given moment what kind of information we're receiving is another game changer. So, for instance, Craig, if you've been running on a pattern of got to do more, that's a very wonderful masculine energy of striving and taking action. There's another piece here called the divine feminine that's coming into play for all of us, a balancing of energies. We all carry masculine and feminine energies, and that's the receiving part. That's the allowing piece. That's the something popping in your email out of the blue. Okay, so we have been working through many centuries, I want to say, on making things happen and working very hard. It's been a very real paradigm, but there's new paradigm here for ease and grace. And when you lose track of time doing something that you love, then that's a great indication to pay attention to that. And even if there's a voice, again, the self-talk piece is really helpful, because it could be a well-meaning, albeit critical parent that thought, well, if I'm going to give this person too much credit, they might stop. So having, again, that divine perspective, an intuitive piece of being able to understand where other people are coming from. And so some advice we've received has not really been beneficial to us, but well-meaning. You see? So your desire to do may have come from a pattern of a family history of doers, something like that. And I've just worked with a lot of people that are here to change the dynamics of patterning from experiences. So being able to pioneer being different, being overdoing. There's something to that.
Yeah, overdoing. I love that phrase, overdoing. I do a lot of overdoing. And
once you catch it, you can be aware of it, and then you can question it.
Yeah, and but couldn't that also be part of a blocked energy source somewhere in one of the seven? It all seems to tie together. If you can see this result that you're not enjoying in your life, maybe it's time to sit and go through the energy centers, or work with someone like yourself who can coach and work with you and bring this stuff to fruition and unblock this energy.
Yeah, and then the root, when you're saying the doing. So say you feel like you've got to get a lot done. If I were to potentially look at the root chakra with that would be coming out of fear. So if we all understand that we're either in fear or love in any given moment, it gets really crystal clear and really easy. Okay? So if you're doing something and you become aware that you're doing it from any kind of fear-driven, like I've got to, that energy is a lower vibrational energy, right? If you're doing something because you love and it's passion and you feel great, that's a different energy. So start to notice what you're doing energetically. So you see, so if you're doing a lot, but you love what you're doing, and it's not being run from a fear-based system, it's going to have different energetic attraction, magnetism.
Yeah.
Okay, anything we do from fear just isn't the highest energy.
Yeah.
So it's catching it, being aware of what's motivating us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel a lot of that in the root chakra as I'm understanding and as I'm learning about all this. There seems to be issues with the root chakra and the second chakra for me, and everything I read, it points to these things like, the issues are down there. The other ones seem to be, open and for the most part doing well, but it just seems to get clogged up down in the first three or so.
Yeah, those are the first three. Yeah, we're on the earth plane. It's almost easier to be in the higher chakras.
Well, and that's
they
the thing,
feel good.
Because ever since I was a little kid, and especially in high school, I was very much interested in spirituality and religion per se, because that's how I understood spirituality is through religion, and so I wasn't interested in getting a job or having a career. I wanted to understand spirit and God and that kind of thing. That just interested me, and so these lower chakras, which are rooted to the earth and walking amongst everybody and having that kind of wealth and abundance and health and happiness, didn't get worked, didn't get trained, or and all that goop and junk and nonsense got filled up there, and I just noticed within the last couple months as I'm reading about all this stuff and researching, it's like, that seems to be an issue, is that these lower two I wasn't very interested in
right.
the years, and so now you don't use a muscle, they atrophy and they don't work anymore. So and it's interesting because I can kind of put my head or my inner feelings at the different chakras, except the bottom one. And over the course of last week, I've been kind of doing these meditations where I'm concentrating on the bottom one, and it's like it's work to get these things moving.
That's excellent. It is. It can feel denser in the bottom three for sure, and that's really where our great work is, because we are spiritual beings in a physical body. So that's great that you are noticing that. And with that root chakra, I know for myself, I lost a job every year of my life up until I started doing this work. And so, as well as calling it a cosmic boot, I also recognized that fear became lodged in my roots. So I was just, driven to work. Sometimes I'd work 3 jobs and do, and all that. And then when I started meditating and allowing the energy to come through me, my work has gotten very easy, lighter and lighter. I'm not going through the same kind of situations like I was, because now I'm working from love. I love to share what I do, and it feels so different. So I've been there, and I understand it. So I like to help people work from the love that they are. What do you love to do? When you're paying attention to that, you can't be in 2 places at once. So when you're feeling love for something, the fear goes away.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and this kind of ushers us into something else I want to ask you about. And this goes along with kind of that common language that a lot of people use, but I wanted to dig in a little deeper, and it's about the higher self. And you talk about calling on your higher self, and I wonder if you could explain, because you also talk about calling on the angels and other beings, and what's the difference? How does one do that? What do you mean when you talk about the higher self, and how do we contact that and call upon it?
Well, in my religion, it's also called the Holy Spirit. And so what I do is that I believe it, and I know it, and I listen to it. Every morning I say, Holy Spirit, guide me, higher self, guide me. It's one and the same, but I'm someone that likes to keep everything covered here. So this is the best way I can describe it. I understand that the Holy Spirit, what we could call it that, can work through all of us. The divine wisdom, enlightenment, all of that divine understanding and perspective is available 24/7. We all have a higher self. We are sparks of the Creator. We have co-creative abilities. So our higher self is always at peace, always blissful, knows the answer to every question, is completely connected to God in every moment. Okay? Our ego is another part of our personality that likes to try to keep us safe and has reasons for doing so, but ultimately when we surrender and integrate the ego into the higher self, it's like the higher self is running and navigating our lives. Each and every one of us have this opportunity to do this during this lifetime. So the higher self, I call on it. Like I said, I call on it every morning. And when I work with people, I call on my higher self and I call on their higher self. And it's like I'm having a conversation with the highest part of them. And it gives me information that's helpful for them. And it's loving, it's kind, it's powerful, and wise. And when you feel that, it talks without missing a beat. It's very succinct. So if I have a question in my life that not sure what to do, I call on my higher self, and I do what I call channeling my higher self. I start speaking out loud without editing myself, and I open myself up to hearing information. And that's key. That's not easy for people to do because we get kind of comfortable and we may not want to know answers even if we think we do. So being open and recognizing that we can get any kind of information that we want at any given moment is possible through the higher self.
That's beautiful. Another kind of a large question for you, and looking at the clock, this might have to be our last question, but one of your other books is Miraculous, How Spiritual Awakening Cured My Depression, Inspired My Purpose, and Ignited the Intuitive Powers. And I was wondering if you could explain spiritual awakening. What does that mean to you? What was it for you? How may somebody become spiritually awakened?
Right. The spiritual awakening happened definitively for me when I began to practice this Kriya Yoga, which was breathing through my spine. It was really easy. And breathing up my spine, saying, I am that I am, at my crown chakra, and breathing back down. Doing that over a period of, consistently, for me, a period of weeks, and I continued to follow this. I began to awaken up this wisdom within me where I heard this higher self voice more clearly, like, you're going to write a book, get your paintings together. I would often look around and say, who was saying that? I started to hear this voice more clearly, and it was always so warm and positive and perfectly guided. So I did start to, and I followed it. And I didn't just listen to it, I followed it. I wrote the books. I got my paintings together. I follow it daily. I receive. So being awakened to that spiritual part of me was what we talked about earlier, the knowing things that I would have no way of knowing, but following that feeling of being on track because this advice was better than anything I'd ever heard before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I think...
So being awakened that there's something outside of me and within me all at once. There is really a greater power, and it really is real. It's really working in my life.
Well, part of what I've been listening and hearing you say is, we all have this power, but it also seems like this takes a little bit of effort and some time during your day to connect. And I always use the analogy of the gym. If you want to lose that weight and grow that muscle strength, you're going to have to put in some time and some effort every day to do the work. And it seems like this is the same kind of deal. You want to increase your spiritual awareness, become spiritually awakened, increase your intuition, clear that blocked energy. This is going to take some time and effort, and maybe even working with a coach like yourself to help you get past the roadblocks you find.
Definitely, and it's fun work too, because it's our great work, and things do start to change and shift in our lives in miraculous ways. So you say once you're on a spiritual path, you're on it, and because things keep evolving. You feel connected in ways. So while it is work, it's the best work we can ever do, and it really is fun and joyful.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of having it, instead of being a workshop to go to, it's a play shop. But there are those cold mornings when you don't want to get out of bed and do the meditations or do the work, and those are the times when you probably need it the most. And where a coach comes in, especially when okay, I got a call with Ann on Friday or whatever it is. It's like I'd better. Just like having a personal trainer at the gym, you're going to think twice about having that extra piece of cake on Saturday if you're going with your personal trainer on Monday. But I want to let everybody know that they can find your book, Extreme Intuitive Makeover, 55 Keys to Health, Wealth, and Happiness, as well as Miraculous, How Spiritual Awakening Cured My Depression, Inspired My Purpose, and Ignited the Intuitive Powers Within. You can find those at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. But I also wanted to send people over to your website, Ann, because you actually have a really cool a gift for people right there on your homepage, the free Divine gift set. I wonder if you could talk about that and explain how people can get that.
I'd love to. Thank you so much, Greg. It's the free gift set is a 17-minute audio of chakra clearing and activation, and a 16-page workbook that you can use to work with your own energy centers. Well,
explain
in color.
And color. And where can they find that at?
And that is at my website, AnnDeidre.com, and I'll spell that. It's ANNEDEIDRE.
All right. And from there you can find her on Facebook and Twitter, and I'll also have links if you're on the tippingpointradio.com site and you're listening to this interview on her page. We'll also have the links to her website and to the books and Facebook and Twitter and all that. And I so appreciate you coming on the show. We could talk for a long time because this is such deep stuff, and I so appreciate the work you're doing because it's such an important time, I think, to be becoming aware of this, at least in my life, looking at these blocks and trying to figure out ways of dealing with them. So I appreciate your time and talking with us. And tell everybody, go to the website and claim those gifts, because those are pretty cool, and find out how to work with Ann on a website as well. And Ann, I so appreciate your time and the work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Craig. This has been an absolute joy and honor and privilege. Wonderful time. Thank you so much.